Hi, and welcome to the next video log on the Mike and Mike show. We're today talking about how to bring voice into Teams. We've had lots of requests from customers about sort of demystifying what voice is with Teams, the options you have. So I've invited Mike Gilroy-Scott, Head of Technology from Formation. He's been instrumental and helped drive the Microsoft stack to our customers within Microsoft and really helped us implement voice Teams for a lot of our customers as well. So Mike, thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. A couple of options that we hear, I guess first and foremost, calling plans versus direct routing. What are the differences and what choice do customers have when looking at sort of Teams as their phone system?
Absolutely. So there's sort of two main ways to get calling in Microsoft Teams. One is to buy calling plans from Microsoft. That allows you to use Microsoft as your a line provider, effectively, giving you a sort of bundled minutes on a sort of per user basis. And the other route is to do something called direct routing, which is basically bringing your own telephone lines into the solution.
Okay, so option one with calling plans, and I think this is where there's a lot of perception that it's kind of expensive to do that. You have to go to Microsoft, you buy a set number of minutes, which are quite limited and are expensive, to be fair. So you have domestic and international dial plans. And you know, the other thoughts of that, you're going to Microsoft as an entity, you have to port numbers, things like that. Can be quite challenging, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. So you've mentioned it there. Not only have you got domestic calling plans, you've got international. So you'll need to be very kind of aware what your usage patterns are. Obviously, you mentioned that they're expensive, so you've got to balance the sort of making sure you've got enough for each. You don't want to be hitting up against the limit of your calling plans and all those sorts of things. And they're just not very cost effective when you're used to, having, a carrier yourself. So you also mentioned the number porting. Not many people feel comfortable porting their numbers across to Microsoft. So, they would rather keep their carrier relationship separate. And if that's what you want to do as a business, then the better solution is direct routing. Okay,
so let's go into direct routing then. So Microsoft, to be fair to them, they've opened up the back door and they've allowed this idea of bring your own trunks. What does that mean then practically? Say a partner like us is Formation. What are we doing for customers, and how does that direct routing help in the system set up phone system for voice?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things you need to sort of have to allow direct routing. You need your carrier, and then you need your session border controller, which Microsoft stipulates has to be a certified session border controller, and that facilitates the connectivity between your carrier and Microsoft Teams. What Formation does is we sort out all the bits in the middle. So from your carrier, if you want us to supply that, we can do that, to the deployment, the management of the SBC, and the connection of that into your Microsoft Teams tenant. End-to-end, we can manage the whole solution.
Yeah, okay. So we bring your calling plans, your trunks, your SBC, so we make it all work and bring that into the back end. So next thing then, so if the next question a lot of customers say is, well, I've got, say, an E3 license. Some people have E5, some people have Business Premium. What do you need additionally to unlock the phone system within Teams? And what is the different licensing model? How does that make an effect to me as a customer?
That's right, yeah, although Microsoft licensing is quite complex, and there's lots of different variations. You mentioned a couple there. Essentially, you need what's called a phone system license. So if you have something like Business Premium or Office 365 E3, then you'd buy the associated phone system license to voice enable that particular user, and you need one of those licenses per user who needs to make and receive calls. If you have an E5 license, the phone system license is already included in that, so you don't need a bolt-on if you're already using E5. Okay,
so typically E3, as we see, is sort of this what most people have. You need that £6 per user per month phone system license directly. You buy that from Microsoft to unlock the features, and then calling plans and direct routing. Okay, so the next question we get a lot of a lot of requests from customers to understand more is around legacy. So some of the challenges customers say, well, look, we've got legacy analog lines, lift lines, maybe an old depth system, things that are on premise, maybe we need local breakout. What are the options there around what you mentioned before, a session border controller? How can we bring that old world into Teams?
That's right. So the session border controller devices are essentially enabling devices. They're designed to interoperate with lots of things. So they can be leveraged to support any kind of legacy services you might have, whether you want to retain analog trunks, ISDN trunks on premises, or if you have analog connectivity that you want to bring into your estate or retain as part of your move to Microsoft Teams as a phone system. So we can help you make the right decision, select the right hardware to support those kind of legacy devices, so you're not having to replace any kit unnecessarily.
Okay, so that can sit on premise and offer you that gateway into Teams. And the other thing on that note, then, where you say you've got some customers or companies that maybe have a more formal contact center with a cloud provider, for example, or a legacy on-premise contact center, but they want to almost integrate those trunks, if you will, and allow back office and front office to talk. How does the session border controller work? How does that bring those sort of other third-party platforms into Teams as well?
Yeah, that's right. And I mentioned the sort of enabling devices. They're designed to be connected to lots of different things simultaneously. And the beauty of bringing your trunks into a session border controller is we can route those calls based on a number of factors. So you can connect in your Microsoft Teams tenant, you can connect in your sort of cloud-based contact center, anything through there, and use the SBC as your sort of routing engine to deliver those calls to the right location.
Okay, so it almost acts as, like you say, number comes in, it can choose, right, am I going to a Teams endpoint, or am I actually passing off via a SIP trunk to a contact center whilst utilizing those central SIP trunks? That's a big key part, I think, if anyone's got any legacy or third-party applications, bringing that into that Teams environment. Okay, so I'm going down the route. What does a partner like formation? What's the value add, Mike? What are the key things to think about, both from a back-end Teams setup, but also user adoption? How does one go about that, and what are the key sort of takeaways there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Formation, what we're bringing to the table is our years of voice experience, working with carriers, working with SBCs, working with Microsoft, not just Teams, but the whole Office 365 stack. So we're used to managing carrier relationships and delivering trunking. We're used to deploying cloud-based session border controllers and on-premise session border controllers, and we're used to configuring voice platforms. So when it comes to the whole thing, we're providing an end-to-end service. So there's a lot of complex things in there, and we're bringing all our experience to say, look, okay, you don't need to worry about these things. We'll help you, we'll advise you on the licensing, we'll provide the user onboarding and training, and we'll deliver the end-to-end trunking via direct routing into your Teams tenant for you, as well as the configuration of that tenant, so based on your requirements.
Yeah, I think that's a key part, isn't it? And back to that point of, if you go direct to Microsoft, yes, they'll facilitate setting up, but they won't actually do all the work that needs to be done in the back end. So having that knowledge of how phone systems traditionally work, setting up users, hunt groups, all of the nuances that come with that, we bring that to the table. But equally, the actual training is a key part, isn't it, Mike, around, it is slightly different than using a traditional PBX, and it's giving people those little hints and tips and making sure that they know how to use it on, within their daily jobs.
That's right. I mean, because there is a subtle shift, whilst you can still have Teams handsets on the desk for users, generally the shift has been around to using the Teams client running on a PC. So it's just helping the users adjust to the fact that they're making phone calls via an application rather than a physical handset. Absolutely, you can have the two running together, but the voice features are accessed in a very different way through Microsoft Teams. It's all available through the Teams client and the settings menu, so the user is managing their presence, their delegations, their call pickups, all of those sort of things. It's very user-centric rather than admin-centric. So the user has quite a lot of power to configure all these advanced routing features themselves.
Sure. So it's just knowing where to look and giving the users as much empowerment as possible is a key part of the adoption, isn't it? So final piece, Mike, before we wrap up the session. Again, some people might argue, is Teams a mature voice platform? It absolutely is. And we've seen the development and the sort of R&D, the push from Microsoft, especially in the last 12 months, has been second to none. They are really putting everything behind Teams, and particularly the voice element of it. We're seeing some news come out, updates within the actual Teams client itself around the voice calling capabilities. What are we going to see in April? Just a few tips before we wrap up the session, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So Microsoft are overhauling the UI, or the user interface of the calling within Microsoft Teams to make it a much more seamless experience. They're bringing a lot of the items together in one place that were maybe in a couple of different places. So things like your dial pad, your call history, your voicemail, your forwarding settings will all be on one tab within there, making the user experience much slicker, really.
Nice. So one to watch out for, and again, that continual development that we're seeing. And it's safe to say things like compliant recording, a much richer reporting capability. You know, there's a lot of third-party development going on. We're seeing that within contact center and partners now, or vendors being authorized as a contact center provider. So watch this space. It's only going to get better. And if you are, as a customer, considering Teams Voice, we'd love to talk to you, and there's, you know, can bring a lot of value to deploying it in a seamless way so your users can continue to make the most of Teams. Thank you very much for joining us. Watch out for the next in the series. We'll be doing a more Teams generalized update, but great to see you. And Mike, thanks for joining us too.